You know how sometimes you think you've got the full story on something, especially like those classic fairy tales we all sort of grew up with,
Oh, absolutely.
and then you find the original version, and it's just, well, it's wilder, funnier,
Yeah.
definitely more bizarre than you ever imagined.
Yeah, the unvarnished truth can be quite something.
Well, today we're doing exactly that. We're taking a deep dive into two really unique German folktales.
Yeah.
They feature some pretty unforgettable characters and, let's just say, even more memorable consequences.
Uh-huh.
We're looking at the gifts of the little folk and the giant and the tailor.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, these are not your sanitized bedtime story versions.
No, definitely not.
Our sources are direct excerpts, so they really strip back any later editions, showing the, unfiltered, often quite absurd brilliance of these original narratives.
Right.
So our mission today is to unpack these wonderfully quirky stories, pull out the surprising bits of wisdom and, let's be honest, the outright absurdity, and see what timeless, funny, and sometimes just baffling lessons they offer about human nature, maybe ambition, and the sheer weirdness of the magical world they depict.
And I think what's so valuable about looking at these original, sometimes less polished forms is how they show us how communities maybe once grappled with morality and fear and just human folly.
Yeah.
They weren't just simple fables. They were often these vibrant, even darkly comedic reflections of how people saw behavior and its, well, very tangible repercussions.
These certainly are, and these two really deliver on the comedic side of things big time. So let's jump right in. Our first story. The Gifts of the Little Folk.
Okay.
So picture this. You've got two wanderers, a tailor and a goldsmith, on a journey together. Now, the goldsmith, interestingly, already has a hunchback. And the source tells us he's bold enough, which, immediately paints a bit of a picture.
Sets the scene, character-wise.
Exactly. They're tired, the sun's gone down, but then they hear it, this distant music. It gets clearer, sounds unusual, but also kind of graceful. So graceful, just makes them forget how tired they are. They start walking faster, drawn towards it.
It's that classic folktale lure, isn't it? The ordinary world fades, and this strange sound pulls them into something. Well, something extraordinary, almost impossible to resist.
And it absolutely delivers. The moon is high, they get to this moonlit hill, and there they see it, a whole crowd of small men and women holding hands, just whirling around in a dance. The text says, with the greatest joy and happiness, and singing most charmingly.
Sounds quite enchanting.
Totally. And right in the middle, there's an old man, a bit larger than the others, wearing a colorful robe, and he's got this long iron gray beard down to his chest. Our two travelers just stop, full of wonder, watching this incredible scene.
Right.
Then the old man spots them and beckons them closer. The little folk just readily open their circle. The goldsmith, hunchback and all, described as bold. He steps right in.
No hesitation.
None. The tailor's a bit shy at first, but eventually he gets his courage up and follows them in. The circle closes, the little ones keep singing and dancing like mad, and then the old man takes out this broad knife from his belt. He sharpens it. He looks right at the strangers.
Okay, now the mood shifts.
Oh, yeah. My first thought reading this was, uh-oh, here comes the dark twist. Sacrifice time. Like Grimm stories sometimes go.
Exactly. The tension just ramps up. From pure enchantment to, well, stark fear, and they barely have a second to process it.
Because the old man, super fast, grabs the goldsmith and just shaves his head and beard completely clean. Wow. And then he does the exact same thing to the tailor. Can you imagine? 1 minute fairy dance, next minute you're getting a surprise magical buzz cut from a tiny old man.
That is unexpected.
But here's the truly bizarre part. As soon as he's done, their fear just evaporates. The old man pats them both kindly on the shoulder, like he's saying, "Good job. Well done for, letting me shave you without making a fuss."
It's not just absurd. It feels like some kind of profound, immediate test. They're literally stripped of their familiar selves, and that willingness to submit, even though it's totally baffling, that's often key in these magical encounters, isn't it? It completely flips your expectations.
Right. It's a test you never saw coming.
Yeah.
Okay, so then comes the next gift. The old man points to a pile of coals lying nearby and gestures for them to fill their pockets.
Coals?
Yep, coals. They're confused, obviously, but now they're strangely compliant, so they just do it. Fill their pockets with coals, then they continue on their way, looking for somewhere to stay. As they get down into the valley, a clock strikes midnight. The singing just stops, everything vanishes, and the hill is empty again, just moonlight.
Back to reality.
Sort of. They find an inn, lie down on some straw, and they're so exhausted they completely forget about the coals in their pockets.
Yeah.
Until they wake up earlier than usual, feeling this strange heavyweight.
Ah, here it comes.
They reach into their pockets and just cannot believe their eyes. Not black coals, but pure, shining gold. And, as if that wasn't enough, their hair and beards, happily returned, full and lush. Suddenly, they are miraculously rich men.
That transformation, worthless to valuable, it's such a satisfying trope in folk tales. But what's really interesting here is how it immediately acts as this, crucible. It reveals their basic character before anything else happens. It tests whether you recognize real fortune,
Yes, exactly. Because the tailor's reaction is just perfect. He says, and I love this quote, "I have enough and am satisfied. Now I will be a master, marry my pleasant object," as he called his beloved, "and I am a happy man."
Simple as that.
Simple as that. He's content, found his treasure, ready to live his best life. That's the sensible, happy ending right there. Done.
And that contentment shows a kind of practical wisdom, doesn't it? Recognizing what's truly enough. Happiness isn't about endless getting more. It's knowing when you have what you need to build a good life. In these wild, magical stories, sometimes the deepest insight is just knowing when to stop.
But then there's the goldsmith.
Yeah. One who is bold enough.
And the source adds, greedy by nature. Remember, he'd filled his pockets better, so he already had twice as much gold as the tailor. So what does a greedy person do when they hit the jackpot?
They want more. Always more.
Bingo. He immediately suggests they stay another day, go back that evening, and get even greater treasures from the old man on the mountain. He just cannot quit while he's ahead. It's almost funny how fast his mind goes there.
It is. That insatiable desire, even after this incredible windfall, it's his fatal flaw. It shows that old folk wisdom, the real curses, often come from inside ourselves. His greed is the real problem here.
The tailor, bless him, doesn't want to go. He says he's satisfied. But, to please his friend, he agrees to stay the day. So that evening, the goldsmith, and get this detail, he'd sewn extra pockets onto his coat.
Oh, of course he did. That's hilarious.
Doesn't it just scream greedy man on a mission? He sets off alone to the hill, finds the little folk, same singing, same dancing. The old man shaves him clean again, gestures to the coals. The goldsmith doesn't hesitate, just stuffs as much as he possibly can into all his pockets, old and new. Goes home totally blissed out.
Thinking he's cracked the code.
Totally. He covers himself with his coat, thinking, okay, even if the gold presses hard, I'll endure it, and falls asleep dreaming of being unbelievably rich. But here comes the wonderfully absurd downfall.
Let me guess. Not gold this time.
Worse. When he opens his eyes, he reaches into his pockets, pulls out nothing but black coals. He keeps reaching, pocket after pocket, all just coals.
Oh, dear.
He thinks, okay, at least I still have the gold from the first night. He pulls that out, and to his absolute horror,
it's coal, too.
It, too, has turned back into coal. All of it.
Wow, the reversal is complete. That's a brilliant, almost cruel demonstration of how wanting too much can cancel out all your previous luck. He didn't just fail to gain more. He lost everything because he chased the excess.
But wait, it gets even better and far more physically comical. He slaps his forehead with his coal-dusted hand, only to realize his whole head is bald and smooth again, just like his chin.
Okay.
And his misfortune still isn't over. He only now notices that, in addition to the hunchback he already had on his back, a second one, just as large, has grown on his chest.
No, a second hunchback on his chest.
Yes.
That is the absolute punchline, isn't it? The literal physical manifestation of his greed. It's not just a character flaw anymore. It's this tangible, grotesque burden, a permanent monument to his avarice. In these older tales, the consequences are often right there, on the body. Makes the moral impossible to miss. It's such a visual, unforgettable warning.
It's pure physical comedy and perfect poetic justice. He immediately gets it, realizes it's punishment for his greed, and just starts weeping loudly. The good tailor wakes up, hears him crying, comforts the poor guy as best he can, and says, "Look, you were my companion on the journey. You can stay with me and share my treasure."
That's quite generous of the tailor.
It really is. And the tailor keeps his word. But the poor goldsmith, for the rest of his life, has to carry both hunchbacks and wear a cap over his bald head. What an incredibly specific, hilarious, and permanent consequence.
It's just a masterclass in using exaggeration and physical humor to deliver a really clear message about contentment and the dangers of, endless desire. The tale doesn't just tell you greed is bad, it makes you see the ridiculous lasting price.
Okay, so from a man literally burdened by greed, let's switch gears to another character whose physique plays a key role, though maybe more through its absence by the end. This brings us to the giant and the tailor.
Right. Another tailor.
Another tailor.
Hmm.
But this one is introduced right off the bat as a big braggart, but a bad payer. So you immediately know his type. All talk, no substance, a man of pure bluster. One day, he decides to wander off into a wild, dark forest.
And that contrast, his tiny size versus his huge claims, that's really central to the humor here, isn't it? Sets up this classic David and Goliath thing, but with a really unexpected, funny twist on how the power works out.
Exactly. So he's strolling along, over bridge and path, now here, now there, always on and on. Deep in the wilderness, he spots something way off in the distance. A steep mountain, and behind it, sticking out from the forest, a sky-high tower.
Okay.
Good heavens, cries the tailor. What is that? Curiosity gets the better of him. He marches right towards it. But imagine his face as he gets closer, because the tower, well, it suddenly had legs. It leaps over the mountain in one jump and stands right in front of him as a great, mighty giant.
Whoa! That abrupt, almost cartoonish animation, a mountain-sized tower suddenly sprouting legs and jumping. That's fantastic. It's such a great visual gag. Tells you right away the story is going to mess with expectations and scale in a really funny way, a real jolt of absurdity.
It's so unexpected, isn't it? Almost like something out of animation today. It's the giant, voice like thunder, booms. What do you want here, you tiny fly leg?
Fly away.
Right. But the tailor, always quick-witted or maybe just foolishly brave, he whispers back, "Oh, just looking around, seeing if I can earn my bit of bread in this forest." So the giant offers him a job.
For how long?
365 days a year, and if it's a leap year, one more besides. The tailor accepts, but he's secretly already planning his escape.
Of course he is.
And this is where the tailor's bragging really takes off, sets up this great running gag. The giant gives him tasks, and the tailor replies with these increasingly absurd boasts. First, the giant says, "Go fetch a jug of water." The tailor just waves him off, asking, "Why not the whole well along with the spring?" Then he strolls off like it's nothing.
Okay, I see where this is going. And the giant.
The giant, meanwhile, is described as a bit cloddish and foolish. He starts mumbling to himself, clearly rattled. "What? The well and the spring? This fellow can do more than fry apples. He has an Alran im Leib, a mandrake root, basically mean powerful magic." He thinks, "Be careful, old Hans, this is no servant for you." The giant is immediately, hilariously, falling for the tailor's bluster. He mistakes pure hot air for terrifying power.
That's brilliant. The giant, despite being enormous, is surprisingly easy to fool.
Totally gullible. Next, the giant tells him, "Go chop some firewood and carry it home." The tailor's reply, "Why not the whole forest in one go, young and old, with all it has, gnarled and smooth?" And off he goes to chop the wood.
And the giant's reaction, more panic.
Oh, yeah. He repeats his panic thought. What? The whole forest, young and old, gnarled and smooth. And the well with the spring. He can do more than fry apples. He has a mandrake root. Be careful, old Hans. This isn't the servant for you. The pattern's clear. The giant is absolutely terrified of this tailor's supposed power, which is really just a massive ego and maybe not much common sense.
It's just fantastic how quickly this huge giant turns into a complete coward, a harefoot, as the story says, just because of a tiny tailor's ridiculous claims.
It really is. So finally, the giant orders him, "Go shoot 2 or 3 wild boars for supper." The tailor, totally owning this now, asks, "Why not 1,000 at one shot and bring them all here?"
1,000.
At this, the giant is so freaked out he just gives up. "Okay, just let it be for today. Go to sleep." He's done. The tailor's ridiculous boasting has completely broken him.
Amazing.
The giant is so terrified he can't sleep all night, just tossing and turning, desperately trying to figure out how to get rid of this cursed sorcerer of a servant as fast as possible, which leads him to his desperate and equally absurd plan.
What does he come up with?
The next morning, the giant takes the tailor to a swamp surrounded by willow trees. The giant says, "Listen, tailor, sit on one of these willow branches. I'd give anything to see if you can actually bend it down."
Ah, the physical test. After all the bluffing, now he has to actually do something. But even the test feels designed to expose him in a funny way.
And he does it.
Yeah.
With this magnificent whoosh. The tiny tailor sits on the branch, holds his breath, and makes himself incredibly heavy. So heavy the branch actually bends right down.
He did it.
He did. But then, well, he's human. He has to breathe. And because, and this is my favorite detail, he unfortunately forgot to put an iron in his pocket.
An iron, like a piece of metal.
Yeah. A delightfully specific, totally random, utterly charming detail. Because he forgot the iron. When he breathes out, the branch springs back up with such force that it launches him so high he disappears completely from sight.
No way. He just gets ejected.
Totally ejected.
That's the perfect humor of the ending. His downfall isn't some grand failure of strength or magic, but this tiny, forgotten, completely mundane detail, a misplaced piece of iron. And his fate is just left hanging, literally. Beautifully open-ended and comedic, he's just gone, launched into orbit. It perfectly captures that unpredictable, often silly nature of consequences in these tales.
And the giant, of course, is overjoyed. He got rid of him. The story ends with this wonderfully absurd line. If he hasn't fallen down yet, he's probably still floating around in the air. It's just perfect. The ultimate last laugh for the giant, and such a hilarious, undignified exit for our braggart Tailor.
Still floating around. Incredible.
So let's try and connect the threads here.
Yeah.
These two utterly charming, totally bizarre tales. What do they tell us about human nature in these, well, absurd situations?
Well, both stories, despite all the magic and fantasy, they really zero in on core human traits, don't they? You've got the goldsmith's bottomless greed, and then the tailor's ingenious, maybe, but ultimately self-defeating bravado.
Yeah, but they show it with such specific, almost slapstick consequences. The double hunchback, the floating tailor.
And it's fascinating how they play with perception and misperception, too. The giant is just so easily fooled by big talk. He really believes the tailor has magic powers.
Right.
Whereas the little folk, their lessons are delivered in these weirdly unexpected, almost bureaucratic ways, a mandatory haircut, a tile of coals that might be gold, might not. It really speaks to how easily we can fool ourselves or just be fooled by appearances.
And crucially, how both stories use humor as the main vehicle. They don't really preach, do they? They entertain through just wild exaggeration, bizarre outcomes, and these deeply flawed but somehow still kind of endearing characters. They deliver their messages in a way that's super memorable and genuinely laugh out loud funny. They're funny because the details are so specific and unexpected. A second hunchback on the chest, or a tailor rocketing into space because he forgot a piece of iron. It's the sheer outlandishness that makes them stick with you.
Yeah, these are definitely not dry moral lessons. They're timeless truths, but served up with a chuckle, reminding us about, contentment versus the literal weight of our desires, and the surprising power of a good bluff, or, the accidental results of forgetting your pocket iron. They show this really deep understanding of human flaws, just masked in delightful absurdity.
What a wild ride, though.
Yeah.
A bald goldsmith with two hunchbacks, a tailor maybe still orbiting the earth. These German folk tales are anything but dull, are they?
Not at all. And really diving into these unvarnished originals gives you such a richer, stranger, and often much funnier insight into the human condition and just the power of storytelling itself.
Yeah.
They stick around not just because they're whimsical, but because of the real truths they manage to sneak in, usually through the most surprising and visually memorable ways.
Absolutely. And these stories, they really remind us that the consequences of our choices, whether they come from greed or kindness or even just pure hot air, can sometimes be surprisingly physical and comically permanent. So maybe a thought to leave you with. What second hunchback or maybe eternal floating might we inadvertently be signing up for in our own lives? And maybe more importantly, what forgotten iron might just save us from an unexpected liftoff? Something to think about.